In December of 2022, I was replaying the games Transformers War for Cybertron and Transformers Fall of Cybertron, and around the same time, the 2022 Game Awards were happening, and one of the trailers released was the reveal trailer for the new Transformers game, Transformers Reactivate. This revelation excited the fandom dearly, and with that, I started seeing more and more Transformer fan works, such as redesigns. Now, if you know who I am, you probably know where this is going, but if you don't, let me introduce myself. My name is Joel Bolt Drawings, and I've been doing art and animation for a while, but we're not talking about all those other years, we're talking about all of last year. I have been creating redesigns for Transformer characters, and not just that, but also animating them in my style. But why? As an artist, seeing all these good redesigns inspired me to make some of my own. While yes, this is a video about how I redesigned Transformers, this is also a video that could serve as a guidance to you, the viewer, on how to create your own redesigns, and not just for Transformers, but honestly, any piece of media. But where would one start? First, I chose a short list of Transformers to make redesigns for, because if you haven't already noticed, there are a lot of Transformers. In fact, and the roster I chose from each faction came from the 2007 Michael Bay Transformers movie, which had 5 Autobots and 8 Decepticons, a good handful of Transformers essentially. Now, how would I go about doing the redesigns? What was my inspiration? What would I change? What would I keep? Well, that's a lot of questions, so here's a single important question to consider. First and foremost, what's the context of the designs? Usually in any redesign, for any character, there is a purpose and change from source material, usually to fit the tone or the style of the new iteration. An example would be Michael Bay's Transformer designs. Whether you personally like them or dislike them, they fit a certain tone Michael Bay tries to capture with his movies. A more gritty, violent, brutal tone that usually leaves dead robot guts and pieces after each fight scene. So to match your contextual tone, your redesigns would have what's needed to convey it. In this case of those movies, intricate robot car parts and pieces. The context for my redesigns were meant to simulate if I were to create my own Transformers show, one animated in my style. If I were to be making my own Transformers show, of course, as a single animator, I'd want more animator-friendly character designs, ones that don't contain too many details like intricate lines and pieces, but just enough details to make the character distinct and recognizable. As such, with several iconic cartoon characters, I took into consideration several different elements in character design I learned about over the course of the time I've been doing art and animation online, and I also considered some inspirations from various characters in media, including other Transformer iterations. The character design elements I considered were shape theory, which used familiar shapes in character design such as their body structure, external designs, facial features, etc. to communicate character traits. Color theory, which has been used to communicate contextual tone, and in the context of character designs in cartoons, character designs are composed of very few contrasting prominent colors, usually between 3 to 5 colors. Distinct features and proportions. One aspect of character design that makes a character stand out and remain recognizable are their distinct features, and how they set them apart from other characters. One way that design recognizability has been tested for character designs is the silhouette test, where you're asked, could you identify your character from their silhouette alone? In this video, I'm going over the redesigns I did for the Autobots, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Ironhide, and Jazz. Before I get into their individual designs, for Transformers in the Autobot faction, I made it so that they shared certain design elements outside of just the insignia, to give a subtle visual sense of them all belonging to the same team. For the Autobots, when utilizing shape theory, I designed their bodies to be composed of shapes between circles and squares to communicate a more friendly, peaceful, protector-like appearance. And the use of these shapes would be meant to resemble the ones used in the Autobot insignia. I noticed something similar was done in the designs for the Autobots in the War for Cybertron games. When utilizing color theory, I did refer to the color scheme of the G1 character designs, but also considered to make sure that the colors heavily contrasted each other, using an abundance of at least one bright color or shade. Context-wise, this would communicate a friendly appeal to humans. Media-wise, it appeals to the general audience, similar to the color differences between the Autobots and the Decepticons in the Michael Bay movies, where the Autobots were mostly these bright, colorful vehicles, not you, Ironhide. In an action sequence, usually abundant of a shaky camera and explosions, you would be able to point out if an Autobot was in the scene, based on those bright colors alone. When thinking of distinct features, I took account of faces, which contain some of the most expressive and recognizable features for any character. For the Autobots, I chose features that resembled humans, or features that generally look friendly. For aliens that could literally change their form and seek to ally with and protect humans, it makes contextual sense for the Autobots to make their facial appearance relatable to humans by being able to show human-like facial expressions or distinct features that communicate emotion. I also took account of different body shapes and exaggerations. One thing that is good to communicate individuality between characters is that they don't all look the same. Each member is a different bot who's had their own story, their own path, and one way to subtly communicate that would be to tell it through their unique appearance. Ideally, none of them would look the same.
Let them come.
This was the first redesign I tackled when I thought about making them for the Autobots. Some key things I kept in mind about Optimus Prime was that he is in several iterations a leader, iconically heroic, strong enough to be gentle, stoic, honorable, experienced, compassionate, and overall pretty base. The vehicle I chose for his alt mode would be his classic G1 truck, which I learned was called a Freightliner cab-over semi-truck. The body is red with a white stripe across it, and with a cut in the stripe before it reaches the grille, because I thought it would be cool. With the Autobot logo set on the stripe roughly before it reaches the door, and the rear colored blue with a yellow front plate. The general layout of the vehicle parts across the body were meant to match his G1 counterparts, with the window chest, grille on the abdomen, smokestacks on the shoulders, wheels on the legs, put the fuel tanks on his back like Bayverse's design, and the doors on the back like Prime's. When it came to colors, yeah, I stuck with the classic red, white, and blue, and a little bit of yellow. The colors you would find in characters like Captain America and Superman, who share a similar sense of righteousness. When first designing his body, I gave Optimus more square shapes to compose his body of to emphasize several of his qualities, such as his balance between his own strength, morals, intelligence, as well as his stability as the leader of the Autobots, the go-to guidance in their time of need, the dependable role model that stands tall, structurally sound for them. I wanted to give Optimus features that resembled that of a comic book hero and or protagonist, including features that depict his physical strength, which includes the larger classic big-chested upper body with them robotic muscles, and maybe that tiny waist. Kind of like Hercules over here. Also, this was applied in his animated counterpart. But also, I wanted to give the rest of the body balance too, since Optimus is much more than his physical strength. And so I made him visually balanced by adding weight and a few lines to his shoulders, forearms, and legs to visually match his strong upper body. Though when animating him, I also made his waist a bit thicker along the line, so he went from Hercules to more like Kratos.
It's not between us, Hercules, isn't it? You were always Zeus's favorite.
When designing his face, I wanted it to look somewhat intense. While yes, he is compassionate towards all sentient life and has shown his friendliness to humans from time to time, there's no doubt the guy has seen a lot and no doubt has a lot on his mind from the centuries of Cybertronian war. And in the end of the day, he is a leader who needs to lead his crew even with absolute initiative. I thought along the lines of taking inspiration from Samurai Jack, another warrior from television whose determination similarly knows no bounds to bring balance back to the world every second, and the intensity of his face shows it. I also had Keanu Reeves' John Wick's face in mind, considering his indomitable will to achieve his objective of avenging his dog is the same vibe I wanted for Optimus too. Also, when designing the mask mode for combat, I thought the shadow casted around his eyes would be really cool to highlight Optimus's eyes and the determination he shines through them. I also designed the helmet to have these prominent designs near the cheeks, and I was thinking it would be associated with his higher ranking in leadership. And I added this tall emblem on the front of the helmet that stands out as an important symbol. I was thinking this particular design would be associated with the lineage of Primes. And I'll be honest, I just thought it'd also be cool, and my brain is pretty fried after trying to remember all the in-depth, undocumented thought process I had making this design in late 2022. So with that being said, before I move on to the next ones, I just want to make it clear, not every design part and piece has to really have some deeper purpose, to be honest, and that's the real joy in redesigning, and honestly, just with art in general. I know I just spent a majority of this section talking about the deep thought process behind these design choices like a freaking nerd, but like those last few choices, sometimes you just gotta put in things you like. because you like them, and you're in your right to do so in your own work. Sometimes you do subconsciously pick these things because you may feel like they worked for other characters who may be similar or just worked for the source material itself. For me, I just took a moment to think about why some of these characteristics in design worked for me, and there is some psychological aspect to it, and I found it interesting how subtle some visual aspects of character design can really just fire up your neurons and tell you off the bat how we feel about a character from visuals alone.
I have come here to kick ass.
Some things I kept in mind when designing Bumblebee was that he is in several iterations well-liked, like widely beloved, extremely friendly, empathetic, small, really brave, acts most juvenile compared to other Transformers. One time peed on a dude. I didn't really consider that last one in the design, it was just something I remembered. The vehicle I chose for Bumblebee's alt mode was meant to vaguely resemble that of a yellow and black generic sports car that shares some features with his Bayverse counterparts, Chevrolet Camaro. I wasn't the best when it came to drawing vehicles. Heck, even now vehicles are still not my strong suit, so I just went with what I came up with. When it came to color, well, I referred to more of the most recent iterations of Bumblebee, where most sport a yellow and black color like an actual Bumblebee. When it came to pattern, I had it so that there was a thick black stripe on the top of the car, sporting the Autobot insignia in yellow. This specific spot was chosen so that it would end up showing on his chest in his robot mode, much like how it was on his G1 counterpart. When designing his body, I gave B a relatively smaller, rounder body, kind of having War for Cybertron's Bumblebee in mind here, but also kind of like a Bumblebee, which also I felt helped give off a bouncier feeling that parallels his youthful, energetic spirit. I designed his forearms to actually look similar to that of an actual Bumblebee's body, including the pattern, allowing for his weapon of choice, an electric baton he'd nicknamed Stinger, to act as, well, a stinger. It's all connected! I added the doors on the back too. A common trend in Bumblebee's most recent iterations are the car door wings, hence his name. And honestly, I really like it, so I added them. Our Bee's got his wings now. When it came to the general layout of car parts across his body, I was thinking along the lines of his animated counterpart, which itself is technically inspired from his G1 counterpart, but this design layout has more in common with animated's layout, where the front end of the car, including the wheels and hood, would take up his feet and legs, had the windshield and front half of the car take up the front of his body, and the back half of the car would form the back. The rear lights would actually end up being put on his shoulders, connected to the wheels that form the joints for where his shoulders and arms meet. I made his upper arms metallic clamp-like to make his upper body seem a bit lighter too. When designing his face, I actually went with a more simplistic approach to make a stronger impression to humans, thinking along the lines of trying to match pop culture cartoon icons like Spongebob Squarepants over here, who is also yellow. I gave B a full-on mask, and I chose a single facial feature to be the highlight of it. I chose one of the most expressive parts of the face, the eyes. I gave him big ol' round eyes.
And stop staring at me with them big old eyes.
And this aspect of his face was inspired by Baymax and the Iron Giant, who similarly are both very friendly and compassionate robots with human companions and can totally kick ass when they need to. I made them more oval than circular, just for the sake of resembling an actual Bumblebee's eyes. When it came to the helmet design, I gave B his classic G1 horns, added a few vents on the side of the mask. For the triangle on his face, I actually drew inspiration from a part of the anatomy of an actual Bumblebee's face, the part known as the clypeus, which is also in the middle of the face. Though it is not exactly triangular, I'd say it vaguely resembles a triangle enough, so I made the pattern triangular on B.
The boy's pheromone levels suggest he wants to mate with the female.
Things I kept note of when designing Ratchet was that he is in several iterations relatively older, very much experienced. As a medic he cares. Also he can be quite pessimistic, witty, sarcastic even, intelligent, and he has a terrible bedside manner. The vehicle I chose for Ratchet would be your generic Type 3 ambulance, with his G1 red and white colors. While I hadn't included it in his character sheet, I also thought it'd be cool that if he were to transform without the medical pack on his back, he would turn into a Type 2 ambulance instead. I kept to his classic G1 colors, red and white, the usual color you'd find on some medical symbols, like the Red Cross, but also at the same time not using the Red Cross. There are like several instances in media where depictions of a Red Cross, mostly found in medical settings, had to be changed to abide by the Geneva Conventions. So while recognizing that, I just went with his red EKG symbol with a white line, like in Ratchet's other iterations, most notably his animated counterparts. When it came to Ratchet's body, I definitely took a page out of his animated counterparts book. I felt like the larger body was a very fitting look for his archetype, serving as a display of age, which sticks out amongst the rest of the crew, and I figured the bigger body would counterweight the large medical pack that he would have to lug around the battlefield. I placed the front end of the ambulance parts to make up where the belly would be, and placed the splitted windshield over his chest to vaguely resemble the placement it had on his G1 counterparts. I also added his wheels to his elbows, and the joints between his feet and shins, and like his animated counterparts design, again, I added the arm shields depicting his ambulance symbol. Unlike Animated's design, I gave him a detachable medical pack that is a part of his transformation and that has his siren lights attached to it on the top. When it came to Ratchet's face, I aimed to make him look more like an older, nerdy doctor with round glasses and a nice uniform mustache, which made me realize I made him look like one of the most iconic doctors television had ever seen, Dr. Phil.
Bring it on, bitch.
I also definitely took a page out of his Prime's counterparts' eyebrows, including the color. I thought the thickness of them complemented the older Doctor look. The overall layout of the helmet, especially the sides, was somewhat inspired by tech from the Star Wars series The Bad Batch.
He's here. I smell him.
Some key things I kept in mind about Ironhide was that he is in several iterations old, gruff, ornery, prefers actions over talking, hardened, weapons expert, pretty badass. The vehicle I chose for Ironhide was meant to look similar to the A-Team's GMC Vandura van, except red. The choice of his alt being this particular van came from his G1 counterpart's alt mode, but with a little extra flair by drawing inspiration from one of the hardest iconic military teams in mainstream media during the 80s. I will admit, I do like the black paint on Ironhide from the Bay films. Part of that might be due to me growing up with the Bay films. Also, it turns out he was made this color because Bay didn't like filming the color red. According to him, it didn't photograph very well, though later in the series they would give Mirage a full red body, but that was likely because of a better camera technology. This was also the reason why Optimus wasn't fully red and had more flames on his paint instead of plain red. I wanted to retain that dark color as a big part of his color palette, more of what you see here, while also taking the deep red from his G1 counterpart as well as the yellow, but reserved the yellow for the bits of ammunition he carried around his body. When it came to his body, I made him the largest, bulkiest Autobot of the group, with a wide, large body strong enough to lug around ammunition belts, rifles, hand cannons, and shotguns. When it came to his body, I had Danny Phantom's dad in mind, and I was thinking he would be armed to the teeth, kind of like the Punisher, or more similarly Punisher 2099. In general, I pictured something like Soldier from Team Fortress 2 and kind of like older Boba Fett. I also placed his top lights on his shoulders, his wheels on his elbows, and on the sides of his calves, his front lights on the shoulders, and his front split windshield on his chest. I had him carry an ammo belt that held shotgun rounds on the front and machine gun ammo on the sides, and a shotgun and machine gun carried on the back, and the two hand cannons hidden in the back. When it came to his face, I wanted to give old Ironhide an old, gruff, serious looking face. I wanted it to look similar to what you would find in an older soldier's face, like a military general's. This particular face takes great inspiration from Team Fortress 2's Soldier and General Rogard from the Iron Giant. The helmet, while taking heavy inspiration from his G1 counterpart's design, also had goggles integrated into the helmet. In context, when your specialty is working with huge variety of weapons like ballistics and explosives, which could cause shrapnel to fly around, eyewear is probably quite important to have on yourself. Also added an antenna on the right side of the helmet for a little extra sauce.
This looks like a cool place to kick it.
Some key things I kept in mind about Jazz was that he is in several iterations upbeat, acrobatic, pretty chill, pretty cool, outgoing, pretty much into Earth culture, loves their music, shows and incorporates Earth slang, noticeably Ave, and pretty stylish. The vehicle I chose for Jazz was meant to closely resemble his G1 Porsche, but with less intricate designs and more solid colored patterns. Though I did retain the original white colors, I added a dark blue section on the back third of the vehicle, accompanied with a dark blue and red stripe on the hood and roof of the car, with a white Autobot insignia on the roof. When it came to Jazz's color choice, I stuck with the primary white color, and to reduce the amount of prominent colors on the design, I combined the black and blue color from his G1 counterpart and used a dark blue color instead, complemented by a red stripe. I also put in yellow plates, though something I noticed in some of my animations is that they come out as mostly white instead, due to the 3D scene's lighting. When it came to his body, I wanted to give Jazz a bulkier upper body, one that could soundly support handstands, as well as leaping from those handstands, in the context of this iteration of Jazz being talented with acrobatics. I kept the front end of the car on his chest, placed his front windshields on his abdomen, his wheels found on top of his shoulders and on his calves, placed his rear lights on his elbows, and for a little pizzazz added spoilers on his forearms, and placed the roof of the car on his back, along with the car doors. When it came to his face, I wanted to give Jazz a really charming smile with a tooth gap, like a few popular actors in media like Eddie Murphy, Lawrence Fishburne, and Samuel L. Jackson over here. Also, when I was thinking about tooth gaps, I suddenly remembered that scene from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Jamie Foxx's character Max gets his tooth gap closed while being changed into Electro? I'm not even kidding. There is a literal few-second shot showing the tooth gap closing during the transformation. Weird. To give Jazz a sense of being hip with human culture, I also gave him angular glasses, which all across media, most characters who wear these shades have this chill demeanor, like they're on top of everything, and whatever they do in style. In fact, there were at least 2 characters in Transformers Animated that had these sorts of shades, Prowl and Soundwave. As for these designs on the side of the helmet, I made these in reference to his relative higher ranking amongst the Autobots as Optimus's first lieutenant.
Don't freak out, easy fix, puzzle code in my head, now it's on the walls, everything is good.
I did not put much thought into the human designs, if I'm being honest. While I understand why humans are very much the center point of Transformer movies, I personally was not as engaged with animating when I had to animate humans compared to animating Transformers, at least for these animations, so I admit I was just a bit lazy with them. I did want them to be somewhat messy looking, very lacking in structure and consistency, to juxtapose the structured lines, shapes, and form the Transformers had in the animations, putting emphasis on the difference between human and robot. For Sam Witwicky, I just mixed Shia with Spike Witwicky, then boom, we got this guy. We got Germa. For Mikaela Baines, I just tried to make her look more like a tomboy with shorter hair and a leather jacket. And yeah, that was the process I had making the Autobots, and like 2 humans. And if you stick around long enough, you might catch the video I make for the thought process I made for the Decepticons. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, hey, what the? Subscribe now! Ah!